Please. Okay, well, welcome to Stapleford Miniature Railway. Welcome to the Railway Challenge. My name is Simon Ivnitsky. I'm the chair of the organising committee that organises the challenge every year. I'm going to introduce colleagues to you who are going to explain the different aspects of the challenge. There'll be plenty of time for you to ask questions if you want to. Normally we have a ride around the railway. It's quite extensive and goes around a lake. Unfortunately today we've got no train running, so we're going to have to walk around. But it's quite a nice walk and the sun's shining, so hopefully that will be all right. We'll lead you around that afterwards. Okay, so we're really pleased to be able to host the Railway Challenge here at Stapleford Miniature Railway. And the first person that I'd like to introduce is Richard Colby. Richard is from the Friends of Stapleford Miniature Railway. The Friends here organise the railway and the locomotives, and they're always very supportive to all the teams, and they make it possible for us to hold the challenge here. So,
morning everybody, nice to see familiar faces again, and welcome to everybody who's visiting Stapleford for the first time. Just a quick potted history of the railway for you, so it puts things into perspective. The railway was actually first built in 1958 and was built by the Gretton family, who lived in the hall at the time, basically as for the public when they opened the house twice a week. And the railway used to go down to the lake, and the lake used to have some liners on it, and it was a good day out to go on the railway, travel around the lake and what have you. The house actually closed to the public in 1983, and at the same time the railway itself closed as well. It then lay derelict for about 8 years until a group of us who had known the railway for some time approached Lady Gretton, and we were given a licence by the trustees to get the railway back into operating order again. And this was 1992 when the railway sort of started again, and we run just twice a year for the public now, and donations, and we make donations to the Leicestershire Organisation for the Relief of Suffering, which actually looked after Lady Gretton's husband when he died. The Railway Challenge has been, this is what, 10th year, 11th year, is it? I
think it's 11th.
Okay. So the big advantage of this railway is that it is privately owned, and it's not open to the public every day or every weekend. And this allows us to host the IMechE Railway Challenge, and it is one of the longer and one of the oldest and one of the best miniature railways in the country. So that's just a sort of potted history of the background. The other subject that I just need to talk to you about is, although our railway is fifth full size, the hazards, I can assure you, are very much full size, just the same. So you must be careful, do not walk on track, and especially today it's slippery in certain places. Do not walk over point motors and things like that. You are free to walk wherever you want, but you must do it with safety in mind. We don't have any moving trains today, so you needn't worry about that at the moment. Is there anything else, Simon, that I should mention that I haven't?
I think so, and maybe the questions at the end, but
yeah,
that's fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you've got any questions, just don't hesitate to ask.
Okay, thanks. The next talk is about the rules. Hopefully you're all a bit familiar with the rules. You'll all downloaded the rules on the technical specification. Tim Fairbrother leads the group that writes the rules each year. So he's going to briefly explain those.
Morning, everyone. So, as Simon's mentioned, I, supported by a number of other people on the committee, author the rules. Hopefully you've all seen those, or at least had a skim through those. As you probably know, the rules are intended to ensure one, fairness, that there is no unreasonable advantage of any team in the competition, that we've got a fair competition, and also to ensure to a certain extent safety and ensure that you put into place various controls to manage the safety of yourselves and your locomotive as it's operated around the railway. What I'm going to do now, given that we're here for the site visit, is run through what are known as the track-based challenges, which are in section C of the rules. The first two sections go through team organisation and other requirements. Section C goes through how the challenges will actually be run on the competition weekend. So there are now 8 track-based challenges, and then there are also 5 presentation challenges. I'll go through the track-based challenges. The first 5 of those are laid out in the rules in the order that they take place as we go round the railway, and this will become more apparent when we walk round the railway route later on. Simon's just been given a very helpful map, which indicates on there. Yeah.
So we're up here.
So yeah, we'll do it with reference to the map then, and then you'll see this a bit more clearly as we go round the railway. So we're here at the station. Sorry, the station building is here. So we'll go round, and then this goes down a bank. There's a tunnel on this bend here, so you'll note the tunnel as we go down, and then this is all a downhill gradient going down to the lake, which Simon mentioned earlier. And the first challenge which takes place is the auto stop challenge, which is around these points A, B and C here. Points A, B and C on this map are referenced in the rules. So as you're probably aware, you're required to put a trackside marker or balise or something of that nature which your train can detect at point A, and then the intention is that your train stops as close to point B as possible automatically. So without any human intervention, it can detect point A and then stop as close to point B as possible. So that's the first track-based challenge. This area down here, there is a building down here. I don't think it'll be open today, but it'll be open on the competition weekend in June. That's called the Haven. So there's a large area of concrete standing in front of that. So it's quite a good area to congregate, but obviously the railway does go through that, so safety is paramount there when there are trains passing through that. Beyond the Haven, there is a small bridge which crosses this river that comes down beyond the lake. And the second challenge is ride comfort, which starts at the bridge and then follows a route all the way around the loop to point E, which is on what we call the spillway, which is an outlet from the lake to overflow into the river. So it looks like a bit like another bridge. So the ride comfort challenge goes around that part of the loop, and we fix a triaxial accelerometer onto your locomotive. So the tech spec requires you to have a ferrous plate, because the accelerometer attaches magnetically somewhere on your locomotive, and you can nominate that point and put a plate there such that we can attach the accelerometer, and that's used to measure the ride comfort around that part of the loop between points D and E. So the next challenge is the energy storage challenge. So from point E you accelerate, and then you're required to brake and stop. I think it's before point F, according to the rules. And as you brake, you're storing energy through the retardation of the locomotive, and then using that stored energy, you're then required to propel your train, your locomotive, as far as you can, and we measure the distance that you can propel your train using the energy that you've stored. From that point, then we rejoin the track back up towards the station, and there are a series of challenges around two challenges around these points G, H, and I. So from point G, you're required to accelerate, and we measure the time between points H and I. That's going up on an uphill gradient, so we measure the time, and that's the traction challenge. See how quickly you can accelerate up the bank. And when you pass point I, we also measure the sound emitted by your locomotive, and that's the noise challenge. So those two are concurrent. In theory, you're competing between having quick acceleration, in theory depending on your traction source, there may be a higher higher level of noise emitted if you're accelerating fast, and hence we measure the noise concurrent with that. From that point, then it's the return up to the station, and that's all of the track-based challenges which take place around the route complete. So on the challenge weekend, across the 3 days that we're operating, the first day, the Friday, is you get a run round, which is principally for scrutineering. There are 2 elements to scrutineering, which Tim will come on to later, but the second run is a dynamic scrutineering run to validate safety functions of your locomotive, and that your locomotive is in compliance with the rules. On the Saturday, you'll get a chance to run round, assuming your locomotive is working, which, as you may be aware from previous years, is not always the case. On the Saturday, you get a run round to actually practice on each of those challenges, and on the Sunday is when we actually have the competition, and we score your locomotive in each of the challenges. So, as well as the challenges on the way round, there are 3 additional challenges. The first is the reliability challenge. The reliability challenge takes place across the weekend, and you start with 200 points, but then you're penalised for any reliability target that you don't meet. So the rules define this. So this is things like failure to be ready at an allocated slot. So I think Bridget will talk a bit about how the railway is operated in a few moments. But if you fail to meet a time when you're required to go out on a run, or you're late, then you'll be penalised. And then there is also a time limit for you to get round to run the competition. Then you can't spend all day going around the loop. You've got an allocated time to go round. So if you're late back or late at certain points around the route, then you'll also be penalised. And the third reason, in terms of reliability, that you could be penalised is if you require assistance to recover, i.e. if you break down, derail, something of that nature. So the reliability challenge, you start with 200 and then you're penalised for any failure in terms of reliability or timing during the weekend, and that's across all 3 of the days. So on the Friday when you're doing the scrutineering run, Saturday in the practice run, and Sunday in the competition run. So the reliability challenge run operates across all 3 days. There are then 2 static or semi-static challenges which take place in the station area here. The first is a maintainability challenge, where you're timed and required to remove a powered wheel set from your locomotive in stages, so to ensure that challenge is run safely. So there'll be judges that will be monitoring and ensuring that you can conduct that challenge safely, and so that there'll be pauses at different points within the challenge where the clock is stopped, and then the judges can ensure that you're undertaking the task safely before critical points such as raising and lowering your locomotive, jacking and lowering. And then a similar challenge is the refuelling challenge, where you have to exchange the primary energy source or refuel if you've got a generator or something like that, and you've got a fuel tank. But we time you to refuel on your locomotive. So those are all the challenges that take place across the competition weekend in terms of challenges actively using your locomotive. I won't go into detail on the presentation challenges. There are the majority of these are submitted in advance, and there are timescales in which you're required to submit these. So the design challenge is a document which you submit summarising how you designed your locomotive and what features it has. Related to that is the technical poster, which is a poster which you put together, and that is actually brought to the competition weekend and put on display in the building down at the Haven normally. There's an innovation challenge, which is writing a paper, a sort of academic or journal paper detailing some sort of innovation, and that has to be something that you've at least sought to develop as part of your locomotive. There's a CAD challenge, which is new for this year, which is to put together a CAD model of your locomotive, and then the final one is the business case, which is there's a kind of fictional business case that's laid out in the rules, and you have to actually say how you would why your locomotive is a viable and attractive proposition within that context. And there are a series of judges which will act as the procuring entity for buying your effectively a fleet of your locomotives, and that they'll evaluate you on against what you present. So that summarises the rules very quickly. If you've got any questions, then when we walk round, we can talk through some of the specific locations around the track, or equally, if there's any other aspect of the rules that you want to discuss, feel free to ask me at any point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Tim. We'll take questions at the end just to keep things flowing. So thanks, Tim. The next aspect that we wanted to brief you on is the scrutineering. Before you can take part in any of the challenges, your locomotive has to pass through scrutineering, and Tim Poole leads the scrutineering.
So let's talk engineering, let's talk scrutineering. Obviously the big priorities for this competition is safety and fairness, level playing field. To a large extent that is addressed by the submissions you make, the written submissions you make to the judge panel, who will check that you have complied with all the clauses in the tech spec on a clause by clause basis. You'll be filling in a matrix to describe how you have complied with the tech spec on a clause by clause basis, and if you do this and obey the rules, we hope that it will be fair and safe. Now obviously on the day we have another check. We check as best we can. Some things we can't check. We can't check by looking at a locomotive that it's structurally adequate, but we check all the things we can, if you like, a subset of all the technical spec clauses, a subset. We look at all the things we can physically look at on the day. It's another check, and that's called scrutineering. So you will, if you look at the website, see a description of what things are checked on the day. There is an example of a scrutineering sheet on the website, so you can see the things that will be rechecked. Obviously, question one that I ask is of Malcolm, and ask him if he has checked all the clauses in the rules and the locos were compliant. After that, the team of scrutineers physically look at the locomotives for all the things we can. So that's things like, are the sharp edges, does the horn work, does the brake work? As Tim has said before, we do the scrutineering in 3 different sections. First, with the locomotives off, so we look for the physical things like marking, like sharp corners, like indications, and that sort of thing. We then ask the locomotive to be switched on, and we can do things like checking the brake functionality, checking the displays come on as they should, check the relevant warnings light as they should, the emergency stop buttons work as they should, etc. And you'll see that as part 2 of the scrutineering sheet. The next part and final part is the dynamic scrutineering. So this is your first run out on the railway, which we will walk around now. And that's obviously very crucial. It's good you're here because you can see what the railway looks like. See, that's why you're here today. And that scrutineering dynamic run is going to be your first run on the railway. And that's where we do things like check that your maximum speed really is your maximum speed. It checks that your brake rate is really your brake rate, and it does take into account the weight of the trailer. We have a little Excel sheet that means we sort of compensate for the weight of the trailing load. We check your brake rates, and we check the other things that we can check dynamically. We can check that the speed display is accurate, and that will all be done according to a timetable that Bridget will explain. So it's very important that your locos work before you get here on the day. There are lots of requirements saying you need to do test runs, because if you don't have your loco working on the day, you will miss your slot for the dynamic scrutineering, and that'll be your first big penalty. So you really do want to make sure that everything works on the day. Safety is very important. I'll just wander slightly off scrutineering for a second. Obviously, you've heard from Richard that this 10¼ inch isn't quite as random as you think as a scale. It is roughly 1 to 5. So that means, I'll give you a quick hands up here. So the maximum weight of a real big locomotive on the real railway, 6 axles, is about 125 tonnes. So what's the maximum weight your locos are going to be if your locos are 1 to 5? Hands up. How much lighter is your loco than a real loco if your scale is 1 to 5? Anyone? They all know. Is it early in the morning? It's 5 cubes, so your locomotive is going to be about 125 times lighter than a real loco. Now, most typical locos are about 90 tonnes, so yours is going to come out about 3/4 of 125. So your locos will weigh several hundred kilos, probably 600-700 kilos. So you really need to be very careful with the safety things. It also means that you will not be able to load and unload and handle your locomotives in one piece. It is very unlikely you will have the transport that will let you deliver and lower down a 3/4 of a tonne item safely in one piece. So please remember, when you're designing your locos, first of all, make sure how you are going to assemble it quickly. Do not have every wire loose going into a connector. Do not have every pipe needing making. You will need to think about how you divide the locomotive up into pieces and how you very quickly put it back together. It's got to be ready for the dynamic scrutineering. It's got to be ready for the static scrutineering. It also means that when you do your loading and unloading, which Bridget will talk about, you have to do it witnessed and safety and think about it. So make sure you can get your locos assembled quickly so it's ready for static scrutineering and it's ready for dynamic scrutineering. That's a really crucial thing. So that's basically scrutineering. 3 parts: static, off, static on, and dynamic, and that will be according to a timetable. So please make sure you have a look at the timetable, have a look at your time slots, you listen to Bridget, and you're ready. But most of all, have fun, because if you're going to learn about trains, there is absolutely no better, more fun way of doing it than this. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Tim. Okay, next we're going to talk about operations, and Bridget Eichhoff will talk about operations. Bridget arranges things on the day. It's obviously quite complicated. We've got 11 teams participating this time. Bridget will explain how that works.
Thank you, Simon. Yes, I have done that. As some of the others have already indicated, this may be small scale, but it's a real railway. And as well as the engineering challenges, it has all the operational challenges of a real railway. If you look at it, we've got 2 sidings here, 2 platforms in the station, a few more sidings behind you. When we get the turntable working, we'll have a bit more space, but so far, this is what we've got. So all of your locos are going to be living here. If the one in front fails, I can't get the one behind out. So it's got all the logistics of timetabling for a real railway. You won't be able to read it. That is my outline plan for the weekend. Each of the locos is a different colour. That is roughly what I hope will happen. But it's up to you guys to enable it to happen. So Tim's talked about reliability. We will let you have, when you arrive, if you're team 8, you'll get a list of exactly what you're expected to do, when you're expected to do it. We will be as flexible as we can, but the more notice you give us that you've got a problem, the more likely we are to be able to work around that. We want you to succeed. We're not out to try and catch you out, but we do have the constraints of the railway. So any advice that you can give us when you think you've got an issue, ask for help. Don't hope it'll go away. That's a good life lesson for the real railway as well. If there's a problem, identify it, talk about it. Somebody may be able to help you solve it. Don't go into a little huddle and worry. So in terms of operations, on the Friday and on the Saturday, there will be 1 locomotive out at a time, 1 challenge locomotive, followed by the rescue loco. So when you set off from here on your dynamic scrutineering run, you will set off down the hill, round the loop, back up, into the hedge shunt, which is over in the woods over there, and then back up into this area. And the rescue loco will be there behind you in case you need help. We hope you don't, but it's there in case you do. And as Tim has already alluded to, you have a time limit for that slot. So on Friday, you are in control. You will be told where you need to do your speed test, where you need to do your brake test, all that sort of thing. There's nobody else on the track at the same time as you. Saturday, when you do your test, your trial run, not the competition run, is exactly the same. One locomotive at a time with the rescue loco following you. And it's your day to test and try anything that you want. You've got a time slot. You need to be back up within that time slot or you get penalties. But you can decide which of the challenges you want to try, and within reason, you can go back and try some of them again. You can't do the ride challenge more than once because you can only go around the loop once. But if the auto stop doesn't work and you've got time, your choice, you can have a go at doing the auto stop again, for example. So think about how you want to use your test run. On the Sunday, it's more complicated because we have spectators. We also have a passenger train running on the track, normally pulled by a steam locomotive. So that's excellent fun for the spectators, it's excellent fun for us as well, but it makes the timetable planning even more complicated. So we run a choreographed arrangement of the passenger train and two of the challenge locomotives. So they effectively run as a pair. So on the Sunday, the signals are working. On Friday and Saturday, the signals may not be working. We'll let you know for sure when you get here in the summer. And as with any real railway, all signals must be obeyed. Doesn't matter if it's going to sabotage your energy recovery run. If the signal's red, you stop. No ifs, buts, no anything else. So all signals must be obeyed all of the time, regardless. And in conjunction with that, in terms of safety, if you see anything that you're not happy with, please let us know. You're not telling tales on somebody else. If you think there's a safety issue, you can speak to them, you can speak to us. We don't want accidents, and that's really important. It's a culture of we want to have a good time, to enjoy ourselves, to learn safely. So if you do see something you're not happy with, that your team or some other team is doing, please don't just stew about it. Mention it to somebody. We're not going to get all uptight, but we will try and understand what the issue is, see if it's an issue, and let us know. I think that's it for operations for now.
Okay,
thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Bridget. So next we want to talk about judging. The judges obviously are very important to you, and we have here a few of the judges. Malcolm Dobell is the deputy head judge. Our head judge is Bill Reeve. He's not here today. We've also got Ben and David who are judges, and possibly others are judges around. But Malcolm will explain to you how the judging works. Oh, and I just wanted to say that the judges are independent of any of the teams. The scrutineers may not be. Some of the scrutineers are associated with teams, but they don't make any decisions in terms of the marks. It's the judges that make the decisions in terms of all the marks that are allocated to the teams.
So hello everybody and welcome. The judges aim to be fair at all times. It's not as though we're not going to be absolutely pedantic about this misdemeanour or that misdemeanour, but we will try to be fair. Bridget or the scrutineers or people doing the riding might identify issues which we need to, we'll discuss them and decide what is the right solution in the round. There are also lots of things you can do to help yourselves. In the presentation competition, the design one, the best tip of all is read the instructions and actually use all the space that's allowed. If you think you can say a bit more and you've got space, say it, because it will generally get you extra points. In the presentation competition, it's worth thinking about who's going to present. Get your slides right and then decide who's going to present. One person generally doesn't work quite well, but equally, if everyone in the team tries to present, that doesn't work either. Just think about that carefully. The innovation competition, you have to make sure that whatever your innovation is, it's actually fitted on the loco. If for some reason that innovation doesn't work, or you haven't actually got it fitted, then you might either get disqualified from that competition or get half marks or something like that. The poster competition, please try and make it technical so it explains how the loco works. You have plenty of opportunity to talk about the economics in the business case presentation, but the technical poster is all about helping the spectators on the Sunday understand a bit more about your locomotives, and then they'll be able to find out how they work without having to disturb you too much. In the various challenges, maintainability is one where you can lose lots of points for safety issues, and you will be watched over with a very eagle eye from our judges who specialise in looking over the maintainability challenge. They're just over there. But it's easy to drop a bogey on your toe and it hurts. So they'll make sure you don't. But if you try to, you probably lose some points. In the auto stop challenge, don't believe it's easy, it's not. And things like curvature of the track or a slight gradient might make all the difference between it working and not working. Real railways struggle with getting trains to stop accurately in the right place. And they sometimes test them hundreds of times and still don't get it right. So you might only have a couple of dozen attempts, and if that. And so that's going to be challenging for you. The other one that's a big challenge is the energy recovery challenge. In order to be able to demonstrate unequivocally to the judges that the energy you've recovered during that brake application is the only energy you use to propel the train afterwards. And time again we've had to disqualify people from that challenge because they've been unable to do that. And if you're regenerating into supercapacitors or batteries, that is really tough to demonstrate. So think about that very carefully. The final thing is, once the penalties have been awarded, we do try to discuss them with the teams. If any penalties are awarded on the Friday or Saturday, we'll try and discuss them with the teams on the Saturday evening. And if penalties are awarded during the Sunday, if there is time, or if the penalties make the difference between a first, second and third, for example, we will make sure we discuss them with the teams. But there might not be time on the Sunday to have that discussion. We want to have that discussion because we want you to be forearmed or forewarned that if you think you've scored this much, but actually because of penalties you haven't scored so much. So we want you to know about it in advance, but we will only do that if there's time and if it makes a difference. I think that's all, Simon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Okay, we're going back to Bridget now for Bridget's going to talk about loading and unloading your loco at home.
Yeah, and following on from the concept of safety, one of the most dangerous things that you do is unload your loco. And it's also the first thing that you do. You will have driven, some of you longer distances than others, and it is your responsibility to have a safe way of doing it. You will see in the rules that you have to have somebody who is overseeing the safety. We will observe you, but we are not responsible for your safety. You are responsible for your own safety. So think about it carefully. The unloading is in my timetable. The loading is in my timetable. If any of you are planning, as some teams have in the past, to get your locomotive delivered in advance by a carrier or shipper or haulier or something like that, please let Fiona know in good time so that we can make the necessary arrangements. If you have particular constraints, then please let us know. The normal arrangement otherwise for unloading is we use this area. So we will try and have one van over the far side, unloading there, one van here, unloading here. Then when those two teams are finished, those vans move away and the next pair can come in. So think about how long it's going to take you. You might be stopping other people because there isn't a lot of space. This is the only hard standing where it can be done. So this is the unloading area, this is the loading area. So the same thing applies to loading. Think about it, work out what you're going to need, what tools you've got, what equipment you've got, and practice. The more you practice, the better you are at doing it safely and the better you are at doing it in a sensible timescale. The other thing I'm going to say now about loading and unloading is you won't be in the same place all of the time through the weekend. So any tools or equipment that you need with your loco needs to be movable. You might unload to here, and then when you come back from your scrutineering run on Friday, you'll be over there. And you'll be back here again on Saturday. You will move around. That's inevitable because of the timetabling and the logistics. So work out how you're going to do your loading and unloading. Malcolm's already said, no, Tim, you're not likely to be able to unload in one go, one thing. You probably need to take your loco into bits, put it back together again, think how you're going to do that, and practice it.
Thank you, Bridget. The competition is hosted by the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. Specifically, it's the Railway Division of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. And Fiona Wong is here from the IMechE. I think you probably all had communications from Fiona, and Fiona will talk to you now about IMechE aspects.
Hi everyone, so I'm Fiona.
Just hold it all.
Okay. So I'm Fiona. I'm part of the IMechE events team. So we look after the whole events calendar across the institution. So I have a few of my colleagues here who will be looking after the challenge with me. We look after all the other competitions as well, but I will be leading on the Railway Challenge this year. So I'll be your main point of contact going forward. My main role is to coordinate with the various stakeholders involved in the competition, and also provide administrative support for everyone who look after the technical aspects of the competition itself. I'll also have a commercial oversight, so looking after financial planning and the procurement, but also I have eyes on the marketing and promotion. So we're keen to help you promote your teams. So if you have any interesting anecdotes or you would like to share your story, do get in touch and we can share that on our social media and our email marketing. But yeah, I look after the event planning and the operational delivery of the competition, working with the key stakeholders here with me today. I am the face of the inbox, the Railway Challenge email address. I'll have Liv who will be able to help me on that inbox as well. So if you have any questions, do send them in. If there are any that I cannot answer, I will send them out to the relevant individuals and they'll be able to address them as time goes on. I will be sending out any competition details to the main contact of your teams. So you should have received some from me already, but I'll continue sending you all the event information going forward. But yeah, if you have any questions, do get in touch. But yeah, I'll be here to help you all along, and I'll be there on the competition weekend as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Fiona. And can I just introduce Ben Bonelli? Ben is one of the judges, as already mentioned. Ben's just got a couple of things he wants to mention, and then we'll have the question and answer session.
Some are slightly more obvious than others. With regards to the maintainability challenge, that happens in this station area, as has already been mentioned, on this hard standing. One thing you will notice, there are concrete lips. The concrete isn't necessarily level all the way along or flat. Take that into account. We've had many teams in the past who've come having practiced their maintainability challenge in their workshops, and then they get here and their method of lifting isn't safe or doesn't work because there's just not enough room for a nominally level bit of concrete, or they don't account for the lips when moving their locomotives left to right. So just bear that in mind, have a good look while you're here. It's good that you're here, it allows you to see those sorts of things. That sort of little bit about the infrastructure when you're planning how to conduct your method of work is why this site visit exists. So have a good look around the whole railway as we wander around, and especially this bit. Whilst we might nominally say that the maintainability challenge will take place on Road 1 here, it might be because of the logistics challenges of the weekend, we might do it on Road 4 over the back. So we will make that call at the weekend. We will try and make it as fair enough for everybody as possible, but just be aware, whilst it's nominally flat, there are limitations with the infrastructure we've got. Secondly, one of the common issues with regards to people loading and unloading is they have driven their locomotive here for the first time and it's not been bashed around on a motorway or a back road or whatever. So they get here, they put it back together and go, well, it worked in the lab. Yeah, but that was before you shook it to bits on the motorway. So if you get chance, and it's not always possible, but if you do get chance to transport it somewhere, even if you just go out for an afternoon, get it back to the lab, put it back together again, and check that it still works, that's usually a good indication that by the time you get here, it should work when you put it back together. Okay? Finally, many of you may have seen that the Railway Challenge Awards are currently open. There is an application process for that that has been sent out to all teams. The closing deadline for those applications is this coming Friday. Okay? If I don't see an application form by the end of this Friday, I can't judge your application and you could be missing out on extra funding for your project. So just bear that in mind. If you haven't seen it, go back, look through your emails, check that one out. It's not a difficult form to fill out. The more detail, the easier it is for me to mark, and then we'll make the awards accordingly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hundreds of pounds available for that.
A couple of thousand. I think.
A couple of thousand, there you go. Okay, so the plan now is that we'll have a walk around the site. Sorry there's no loco to take us around, as we normally do, but anyway, we'll have a good look at the site. We're going to walk all the way around and back.